Hi, my name is Adam, and wanted to give you guys in the DFS world a tool that I've used personally to kind of help me as I try to get better as a DFS player. And that is what I like to do is I like to compare the salaries between FanDuel and DraftKings and look for discrepancies because that information is very helpful for me. If a player is priced very high in FanDuel versus DraftKings, that makes a difference in how I potentially approach that player. And it could mean that the person is just overpriced on one site and appropriately priced on the other. Or it could mean he's absolutely a steal on one site and then appropriately priced on the other site. And so what I want to do in this video is actually break it down by position, and it can kind of help you and me as we try to make lineups for DraftKings and FanDuel as the NFL season progresses. And to just quickly show you what I did, I have the player here. This is Kendall Hinton, wide receiver from Denver. It shows his DraftKings salary. It shows his FanDuel salary. Remember, with FanDuel, you have a $10,000 higher budget, which is 20% more. So to give the equivalent price on DraftKings versus FanDuel, could have done this the opposite way, by the way, I added 20% to it. So his DraftKings equivalent would be 3,600 versus the 6,000. And then I just I do a divide right there. And this percentage tells me if a person is softer priced on FanDuel versus DraftKings. The lower it is, the more it is favorably priced on DraftKings. And if I sort this, you'll see the red stands for softer pricing on FanDuel, which makes absolute sense for someone like a James Robinson in week 1 of 2021, who is $500 less on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. And again, that's with a $10,000 higher salary cap. I'm not going to talk about James Robinson, but you get the picture, right? And so we'll probably talk about specific players that I'm interested in seeing the disparity and kind of making decisions on those in another video. But what I want to do is just go position by position and talk about general strategies and potentially how I'm looking at approaching the season based on this data. And again, this data is not everything. And you have to keep in mind, FanDuel is half PPR scoring. It doesn't have bonuses the way DraftKings does. And so you need to factor all that information in. But this is really cool information that I've used to kind of help me plan my strategies. So I took out the min price quarterbacks just for the sake of this video. And what I want to do is I kind of want to see in general how many quarterbacks or in what range of quarterbacks are favorable on DraftKings versus FanDuel. Is it all favorable in one site versus the other, et cetera? So on the quarterback spectrum, what's very interesting to me is there's not much that's interesting about it. They're fairly appropriately priced between the two. There's not much disparity between DraftKings and FanDuel. You'll see the highest disparity where FanDuel is there's softer pricing is more on the higher end guys like a Patrick Mahomes. Remember, he's only $700 more in FanDuel versus DraftKings. But if you equate that DraftKings salary, it's more like $9,700 he should be on FanDuel. And so the higher price guys seem to be a little bit softer on FanDuel, but just not by that much. The fact that it's like, a 10% price increase comparatively is not that much. It is significant, but it's not that much. We'll see a little bit higher disparity in some of these other positions. So what I typically say here is, at least for week 1, that the quarterbacks that are cheaper in general are better on DraftKings than they are on FanDuel, and the quarterbacks that are more expensive are better on FanDuel price-wise than they are on DraftKings. I always pick my quarterbacks based on stacks, and so quarterback pricing is not that big of a deal to me. Running back, however, is a very different story. It's very interesting how this kind of plays out. Let me just quickly change my filter, make sure we're good. So from a FanDuel standpoint, the running back position is much softer on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings. In fact, if I just switch this around, there are literally only 3 players that are better priced on DraftKings than they are in FanDuel on the running back position. Again, excluding min price guys. And this is very interesting to me because it tells me that running backs are that you might want to play a running back in the flex more often, or even set that as one of the things that you do in your MME lineups, right? On FanDuel versus DraftKings, where you might want to pick more wide. Well, we'll get to wide receiver in a second. But this is very interesting that FanDuel's salaries on running backs are much softer than DraftKings, at least for week one. We'll kind of see how things progress as the season progresses. I personally think running back salaries are pretty soft on DraftKings this week. So they're very soft on FanDuel if that is the case. So this was very, very interesting to make that connection and realization. So running backs, much softer on FanDuel than they are on DraftKings. Wide receiver, on the other hand, is a mixed bag. And let me just show you, minus the min price guys, what wide receiver looks like. And so on wide receiver, you have some wide receivers that are significantly cheaper in DraftKings versus their FanDuel salary. A lot of this is due to the fact that the min price for wide receivers in DraftKings is $3,000 versus $4,500 in FanDuel. And so a lot of these min price guys, or close to min price guys, look real good compared to their corresponding FanDuel salaries. And you can use this to your advantage because it might be worth spending down on wide receiver if this trend continues throughout the season in DraftKings, and subsequently or conversely not spending down at wide receiver in FanDuel. And it actually, the numbers switch as you get higher in salary. So the wide receivers that are most or softest on FanDuel are actually the high priced guys, like a Calvin Ridley, who's only $200 more in FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. So if you thought his price was good in DraftKings, his price is even better in FanDuel. Now, remember, there's the half point PPR thing. You need to keep that in mind. But this information is very valuable, at least to me, as I'm building DraftKings versus FanDuel lineups. The tight end position is very similar to wide receiver, except it is almost entirely softer on DraftKings than it is on FanDuel. Very interesting, because remember, running back's the opposite. Much softer pricing on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings. Tight end is the exact opposite. And so again, excluding min price guys, we'll look at the lowest, and you'll see that DraftKings is a more favorable price on all these guys. And there's only a very small subset where, again, it's typically the higher priced guys that are softer priced or better priced on FanDuel compared to their DraftKings salary, like a Travis Kelce, who's only $200 more, same as Calvin Ridley, effectively. So the strategy, by the way, you shouldn't be playing two tight ends in your MMEs. I think that's a mistake unless you really want to get different. I don't think you need to get different by playing two tight ends. But if you wanted to get cute and do that, do not, I repeat, do not do that on FanDuel. It does not make any sense with a min salary of $4,000 compared to the $2,500, which you can punt in DraftKings. And so tight end is very favorable for DraftKings compared to FanDuel. Again, I don't play two tight ends even in DraftKings. I certainly am not going to be doing it in FanDuel. Last but not least, and this is probably one of the more interesting ones, is defenses. Defenses are, interestingly enough, more favorable also in DraftKings compared to FanDuel. And this is mostly because, again, the min price for DraftKings defenses is $2,000 versus $3,000, which is the min price in FanDuel. And the way you can kind of play this, again, pitting the two against each other, is these lower priced defenses, and I apologize, let me add all the salaries back here. You can see that that some of these guys, like the Falcons, who are min price on DraftKings for $3,900 on FanDuel, this is almost a no play on FanDuel, but it makes for an intriguing option for DraftKings because they are the min price. And it's interesting why FanDuel priced them so high. And so you can kind of make these correlations, right? But by and large, your price for defenses on DraftKings is significantly softer than it is on FanDuel across the board, minus like the New York Giants, right? Which FanDuel is $100 cheaper. But that also can play a factor. And so it's almost like from a FanDuel strategy on defense, you might want to go for defenses that are more middle of the road, because that disparity between the bottom of the barrel and the middle of the road isn't as high. You can kind of see that in their pricing. And so to recap, quarterback, pretty much the same between both sites. Running back, incredibly softer in FanDuel versus DraftKings. Wide receiver is much softer on the low end for DraftKings. Better to play lower end wide receivers on DraftKings. And it's better to play higher end on FanDuel. Like, their prices are actually softer the higher you go in FanDuel, generally speaking. Tight ends is almost exclusively DraftKings has better pricing on tight ends, again, mostly because of their lower minimum salary, and the same goes for defenses as well. So I thought this was really helpful information for me, just comparing the two sites between themselves and using it to help me craft strategies as we enter week 1 of DFS. And I hope this was helpful to you as well. And we'll hopefully see you in the next video.